A sippy. Listen, when that first sip of coffee hits your soul, you know it's gonna be a good day. Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. I'm sorry it's been so long. A lot has happened, but I will update you on that in another video. This video today is going to be solely on my first year as a midwifery student. It's kind of crazy where the year has gone. I feel like I blinked and here I am. I just wanted to share kind of how the first year's been, kind of what I've liked, what I haven't liked, the modules I've done. I had a couple of questions I asked over on my Instagram at Derry Does Midwifery if anyone had any questions they wanted to ask me, and a few of you did, so I wrote them down in my little notebook and we're going to go through them today. And I'm just going to talk about how I found it, how COVID affected my time at uni and on placement, and yeah, we're going to cover a bit of everything. So grab yourself a cuppa, either a tea or a coffee. I've got a coffee. I'm not a massive tea drinker and I really have to be in the mood for tea, so I've gone for a coffee. And if you're wondering, this mug is from Poundland, so you're welcome. So in the first year we had 5 modules. So we had the practice module, we had foundations of midwifery practice, midwifery clinical skills, politics and philosophy of midwifery, and anatomy and physiology. Those were our modules. The first modules we did were foundations of midwifery practice and clinical skills. For foundations of midwifery practice we had to make a poster, an academic style poster, 4,000 words, on something normal. I think it was normal midwifery practice. I really should have googled this before I started talking, but I will put it up on the screen if I've got it wrong. So I did mine on positions in labour. I really enjoyed that module actually. It was really interesting. We learned quite a lot about the basics. I'm going to say the core basics of midwifery. So we learned things about blood loss. We covered the fetal skull, maternal pelvis, kind of things like that. It was quite interesting. And then for clinical skills, it was all things like abdominal palpation, learning to do blood pressure, taking blood, vaginal examinations, all things like that. And that was an OSCE. See, we got 3 that we had to like revise, and then they'd pick 2 on a day and we had to do them basically. So we had breastfeeding, IM and abdominal palpation, and then they picked 2 on the day, and then you know you had to like speak about what you would do if you were doing it. I think everyone knows what an OSCE is, but I did really well on my OSCE actually, like really well, so I was really happy about that. And then we went out onto placement for the first time in November. I think it was the middle of November. We went out onto placement for the first time. We went into community. I loved my community placement. It was really fun. My mentor, or practice supervisor as they're called, was so lovely. Honestly, I couldn't have asked for a nicer practice supervisor. She was incredible. And the area that I was in was just really nice. And I saw my first birth out on community as well, which was just a whirlwind. Yeah, it was crazy. I will never forget that ever. But yeah, it was crazy. And then we had 2 weeks off for Christmas, so obviously we were just chilling, you know, recharging our batteries, having a bit of Christmas food and celebrating the new year and all that jazz. And then we went back into uni, I think it was the 2nd week of January, and we started politics and philosophy. This was my least favourite module, but we went over like global midwifery perspectives, we did feminism, you know, we went back in time and we looked at midwifery back then and kind of how things have changed. We looked at the NHS. So much was covered. It was really interesting, and that was a essay, a 4,000 word essay. Not my highest mark out of like all my modules. It wasn't my highest scored, but I kind of didn't mind that because I didn't really it just wasn't my favourite. I enjoyed it, but it wasn't my favourite. And then we finished kind of the block of learning for that in uni at the end of February, and then we went out onto placement. And this is where we did our labour ward placement, our postnatal placement, and kind of got a feel for actually being in a hospital setting. And we were out in placement for about 4 weeks, and then COVID happened and we got taken off of placement literally straight away. We weren't on placement and we were just at home, and it was really weird, but we had the politics and philosophy essay to like still be doing, so we kind of just cracked on with that, finished that. We also had our online portfolio, our Pebble Pad, so we just kind of cracked on with that until we started anatomy and physiology in May. And that was all online learning, it was all online lectures, the exam was online, everything was online. And I actually quite liked that. I really enjoyed being at home. I really enjoyed not having to wear normal clothes because no one could see me. I literally wore my pyjamas for every lecture pretty much. So that was really fun, and it was quite nice to actually be at home and like I could just kind of spread out and make my revision. And the only thing I found quite hard was kind of revising. Like my friends wanted to revise together, and I found that quite hard because I quite like when I'm on my own, I'll spread out, I'll do my own thing kind of thing, but when you're with your friends I quite like being together and being with them, and then you can look at their notes. And then we had our exam in July and we got our results from that a couple of weeks ago, and I passed that. I did really well. Yeah, and that pretty much has brought us to the end of the year, which is where we're at now. So because of COVID, and obviously we missed that block of placement at the start of this year because they took us off placement, we have to make up the weeks that we've missed at the start of the second year. So we go back into placement in October, and we will make up the last 6 weeks just so we can finish our pads, our dens, like the books and stuff, and then that's kind of it for the first year. So yeah, it's kind of finished, but at the same time I also kind of feel like it isn't finished. I do still feel like a first year. One of the questions I had on my Instagram was about the mentors on placement or the practice supervisors. They were called mentors, but the people that you now work with in the hospital are called your practice supervisors, and then you have a practice assessor who basically comes and just signs it and makes sure that you're doing everything, and then your practice supervisor signs off all your like competencies and bits and pieces like that. But someone asked about mentors on placement. All of the mentors, I'm going to use that word really loosely because it is practice supervisors. All of them have been lovely. I've not had anyone be horrible to me. I've not had anyone make me feel like I wasn't meant to be there. You do kind of feel a bit of imposter syndrome, I will say that, in your first year. You kind of don't know where you're meant to stand or where you're meant to be. You do kind of feel like you're kind of in the headlights, like help me. But once you kind of get going and you've had like your first couple of days, you do kind of start to settle in and you know where you can and can't be. But all of my practice supervisors have been really lovely. All of them made me feel confident, all of them made me feel welcome. They're genuinely interested in me, and that's what I really like. They're interested in why I wanted to do midwifery. They're interested in kind of what I do outside of midwifery. Like, it's not just like, oh, another student. Like, do you know what I mean? They really want to know what you're capable of. Confidence on placement comes, that was another question about how kind of confidence on placement kind of comes and progresses in the first year. I'm going to say the first week I was probably quite anxious, and I think it's just because it's a new environment, you don't really know what you're meant to be doing. I was kind of just a bit like, help. But I think once you've kind of had that first week and you know where you're meant to be and what you're meant to be doing, it's quite nice. I will just say, like, if someone says to you, do you want to do something, or if your practice supervisor turns around and says, okay, I'm going to get you to do this appointment, just say yes. Don't be like, oh no, I don't, I don't, just do it, because you'll learn so much better just by doing it. I remember I kept putting off taking blood. I was like, don't want to do it, like, can I just keep watching, and then in the end my practice supervisor was like, no, you're just gonna do it. And I was like, okay, fine. But I'm so glad she did, because now I love taking blood. It's one of my favourite skills that I learned in uni, and carried on into practice. But your confidence builds, obviously. And then when I went back onto labour ward, because it was my first time on labour ward, obviously I was nervous again, because I'd been on the community, but community is sort of like your antenatals, your postnatals, things like that, whereas labour ward is obviously like, you're going to be catching a baby and doing all of that crazy stuff. Is completely different to community, so obviously I was a bit anxious to begin with, but after a day or two and kind of finding my feet, you do improve. And it was the same when I was on postnatal ward. You kind of are a bit apprehensive at first, but then once you get stuck in and you start actually doing things, it's fine. So I will just say, just get stuck in. That is my best piece of advice for anyone going into the first year and who is a bit apprehensive about placement. Just get stuck in. The midwives out in your practice area, they know you're a first year, so they're not going to expect you to know everything, which is actually quite nice. That's the one thing I'm a bit like apprehensive about going into second year, is that they know that I know, so they're going to expect me to know, and what if I don't know? Do you know what I mean? Someone asked how I stay organised. I've always been quite organised anyway. It's just kind of who I am. Even in school I was always, the one with like massive ring binded folders with like everything where it needed to be, and if anyone touched it I literally slapped them. So I've always just been organised. But I would just say, get yourself like a big, I'll try and link some down below, but the big sort of A3 calendars where you can see the whole year, get one of them and start kind of jotting in when you're going to be on placement, when you're going to be in uni. I don't know when you're not going to be in uni or on placement, when you've got time off, when people's birthdays are, and kind of start planning where you're going to do things, because that way you can see it visually the whole year, and you can kind of work out, okay, so I've got, I'm in uni Monday, Wednesday, Friday, so let's see if my friends are about on Sunday, or okay, I'm in uni Tuesday, Thursday, let's go to the library on Monday and, do some wider reading, or I'll go and do my online portfolio, and then that way that's out the window. I've got the weekend free. So it's all about planning and just kind of staying on top of things. If you do have free time and you're like not doing anything socially with your friends or your family, just get some uni work done. Do some wider reading. If you've not got any modules that you're currently doing and you're waiting for the next module to start doing some wider reading around that. But there's just a couple of tips. Get some highlighters, do some highlighting so you know what you're doing and when you're doing it. Colour coding, fantastic. Yeah, just be organised. You've got this. Like, I think once you start, you'll get into a rhythm of knowing kind of what's going on and where you can be organised or whatever. So you've got this. The final question I had was about anatomy and physiology and how I kind of studied for it, how I revised for it. We had our online lectures, which were recorded sessions, so we could always go back and look on them, and like if there was something maybe I didn't quite understand, I could always go back the next day, rewatch it and be like, okay, I understand it now. Our lecturers for that module were incredible. They were so amazing. They'd email us weekly, make sure we were all okay. If we didn't understand something, we could email them and organise like a little tutorial session, like a one-to-one, and go over it. It's just finding a way of revising that works for you. So I did posters. I find that just really works well for me, having something visual to look at. and also just rewriting. I know it's a bit of a ball ache, but rewriting my notes out. So I'd write them kind of roughly in like a notepad, rewrite them on a poster, and I find that by rewriting it, it just kind of stuck in my head. I'm trying to think what else. Organise little study sessions with your friends if you can, obviously COVID permitting. If you can only do them online, just do them online. Just keep reading, keep going over it. Obviously, like I said, our sessions were recorded, so we could kind of just go back over the session if we needed to, but I know for some people they're not going to have that luxury. So just, yeah, try hardest. If you don't understand something, ask your lecturer. If you could do like a one-to-one session with her when she's free, so you can go over information, go over it with your friends. If your friends understand something and you're like, oh actually I don't understand that, can you just show me? Great way of learning. The main way I can say to revise or to study for it is just to read and read and read, and like figure out what works well for you and what you find your best way of revising. For me, it is posters. Our uni gave us like past paper questions, so we could just practice them, and that's really good practice for when the actual exam came, because some of the questions that came up in the past exams came up in our exam, which was quite nice. So those are my tips for anatomy and physiology, and I think just don't overthink it. I think everyone panics when they hear anatomy and physiology, but it's really not that bad. Once you kind of get into a rhythm of it, it's actually okay. So don't overthink it. You will be fine. So that's the first year pretty much done. I say pretty much done because obviously, you know, we've still got to finish that bit of placement that we've got going on. But once that's done, you know, we'll be starting the second year. I feel apprehensive about the second year, but at the same time I also feel very excited. I think I'm just going to take each day as it comes and, you know, try not to stress too much, and, you know, it will be fine. I think if I can be as organised as I was in the first year, we'll be okay. Fingers crossed. So yeah, that's my video on the first year. I hope you all enjoyed. If you have any more questions, just leave them down below and I will do my very best to get back to you as and when I can. If you're not already following me on Instagram, come follow me at DerryDoesMidwifery. Again, I'll link everything down below, so you can find me on my socials. And yeah, that's all I have for you today, and I will see you in my next video. Bye guys.